There is a sentence I have heard in some version from almost every man that I have worked with. It usually at some point goes something like this. When I was doing those things, when I was acting out, I was a different person. I was not myself. I don't even recognize the man who did those things. I want to say two things about that sentence. I don't even recognize the man who did that. The first is that it is true in a specific clinical sense. There is a legitimate psychological mechanism behind it, and it has a name. We're going to talk about it today. The second thing I want to say is that that sentence, true as it is also one of the most harmful things that you could possibly say to your partner that you betrayed. Because what sounds to you like an honest description of your own experience sounds to her like the very thing that she's been afraid of all along. That the man that she was in a relationship with was not the only man living in her home. That there was someone else in there with him. And that the someone else never bothered to introduce himself before he did what he did to her life. Today we're going to talk about compartmentalization. What it is, how it gets built, what it does to the partner, and what does it look like to dismantle it.
Welcome to Joy Recovery Radio. In this space, we talk about betrayal, recovery, and relational harm through the lens of integrity, accountability, and trauma-informed care. Our goal is not to rush healing or prescribe outcomes, but to offer language, clarity, and grounded perspective. This podcast is educational, not therapeutic. You're invited to listen slowly, take what resonates, and leave the rest. Let's begin.
Let's start with the definition. Compartmentalization in our framework is the deliberate maintenance of two or more separate operating realities inside one person. Two realities. Each of those realities has its own values, its own behaviors, its own justifications, its own emotional logic, and its own narrative about who the person is. In ordinary speech, people say they compartmentalize when they say things like they keep work stress out of their family time. It's sometimes called work-life balance. That's not the compartmentalization that we're talking about here. That, things like work-life balance, that is normal cognitive triage. That's healthy. That's not harmful. You should do that. Clinical compartmentalization is something completely different. It's not just hiding behavior. It's hiding an entire world with its own version of you inside of it. The foundational metaphor in this framework from Dr. Minwalla is the secret sexual basement. That is the most accurate picture we have of what compartmentalization actually looks like. The man lives in a home with his family, but he goes downstairs into the basement that no one knows about. He becomes someone that the people upstairs would not recognize. He acts in ways that are in stark contrast to who he is upstairs. He values different things downstairs. He makes different decisions down there. He has different relationships, perhaps. And then, when he's finished, he comes back upstairs and he acts like it never happened, like it doesn't even exist. And he sits down to the dinner table and eats dinner with the family. The basement is not just a place where the sexual behavior happens. The basement is a whole alternative reality. It includes everything that supports the secret life, the lies that protect it, the time that it takes, the money that funds it, any persons who collude with it, the internal narratives that justify it in our mind, not to mention the emotional management that it requires just to keep it intact and to keep it secret. It's important to know that this structure does not arrive accidentally. We don't just stumble upon a secret basement one day. We build it step by step over time. There's a Minwalla white paper that outlines 10 steps we go through to build a secret sexual basement. I'm not going to walk through all 10 steps today, but I want to give you the spine of what he talks about. Step 1 is the original behavior. It's the first time while you're in a relationship that a line gets crossed. Step 2 is where we start compartmentalization. Step 1 was the original behavior. Step 2 is the decision that we make to lie about it, to not come clean, to go upstairs and pretend like it didn't happen. That second decision is the one that begins to frame the walls of the basement. The sexual behavior itself is one thing, but the decision to hide it from our partner is what builds the architecture of compartmentalization. From there, the structure grows. Step 3 is the move from individual isolated lies into a coordinated, covert campaign, an operation where we want to control what she sees, what she has access to, which conversations happen and which ones don't. From there, step 4 is the entitlement engine. Those internal beliefs that justify, in our mind, the covert operation as something that we are allowed to do because we deserve it, because she doesn't understand us, because our needs are not being met, or because we work so hard. Anything can become an entitled justification. I'm running through these quickly because I want you to begin to understand the shape of compartmentalization. The shape is this. The basement is not built once. It's built continuously. Every day he goes downstairs, he is also doing maintenance work on the structure that hides his behavior. Every conversation upstairs is informed by the existence of the basement downstairs. Every interaction with your partner is being carefully calculated to manage her perception of the existence of the basement. That is precisely why the partner, looking back, will sometimes say, every conversation I had with him for the past 15 years or whatever was all happening on top of something that I did not even know was there. And that is a clinically accurate description of precisely what was happening. So I want to talk about what compartmentalization actually does to the betrayed partner. First, it begins to distort her shared reality. When two people are in an intimate relationship, a committed partnership, they're operating day to day on the basis of a shared understanding of what is real. What happened today? Where did you go? Who did you see? What kind of person you are? What is this relationship? What is our family? Compartmentalization means that her shared reality has been fiction for as long as the basement has existed. The version of the relationship she has been living in is not the version that was actually happening. The version of the family she thought she had is not the version that she really had. Every memory she has of every shared experience with you has been built on premises that were false. So when she finds out, she doesn't just have the future impacted, she loses the past. Every anniversary, every vacation, every Christmas morning, every conversation that she thought was honest, all of it becomes something that she has to re-examine because it was happening on top of something she did not know was there. Not only does it change her reality, but it changes who you are retroactively in her mind. When the basement is exposed, the betrayed partner does not just discover a new fact about you, she discovers that there's a whole different person. Partners will often use words in these moments like monster or stranger or imposter to describe the man they discovered after disclosure. The betrayed partner has lost the man that she thought she was in a relationship with, and she's now living with someone she does not recognize, who happens to look exactly like him. I want to pause right here and take a moment to tell you about something that we built for those of you listening to this kind of content. The Joy Recovery Academy is the flagship education program behind the work that Jacqueline and I are doing. It is where the framework lives. 2 live teaching sessions a week, Jacqueline addressing the partners and I address the men, plus a full library of resources. Every live teaching is recorded for later access, and tools that we use in our own recovery and with our private coaching clients. The first 7 days are free, no obligation. You can sit in on a live session or two, look at the library, access the archive of all the videos, and see if the work fits before you commit to anything. If what I'm describing in this episode is landing with you, or if it's unsettling in a way that tells you there's more to look at, the Academy might be the next honest step for you. Go to joy-recovery.com/academy. So let's address a question that almost every partner at some point in this journey is going to ask in some way. And almost every man stumbles when he tries to answer it. I know I did. Here's the question. Can a man actually live 2 lives and not know it? Well, the honest answer is he knew. He knew he had a wife or a partner. He knew he had a basement. He knew the basement was hidden. He knew when he was upstairs that the downstairs basement existed. He knew when he was downstairs in the basement that the upstairs existed. There was no point in any of this where the existence of the other life had been totally forgotten. But this is the part that's very nuanced. This is where the answer gets complicated. What was separated by design was the felt psychological presence of one life in the experience of the other life. What I mean by that is, when he was downstairs in the basement, his partner was not psychologically present to him in the same way that she would have been if he had been thinking about her. He had built, over years, a system, and this system produced a state, a psychological state, in which her existence was technically known, but functionally edited out for the duration of the acting out behavior. That is not the same as not knowing that she existed. What it is it is producing a state in which her existence was not in the room with him while he did what he did. Both of those things are true at the same time. Did he know? Yes. And he had constructed in advance the conditions under which the knowing would be unavailable to him in that moment. Here's what a common exchange is when it comes to betrayal recovery. I've heard this from just about every couple we've worked with, and it was a part of our own relational recovery. Almost every couple, somewhere, especially in the early disclosure period, has some version of this conversation. I want to walk you through it because how it gets handled by him in the moment is one of the most telling things about where he actually is in his recovery work. She'll ask him a question. The question is some version of this. Did I not cross your mind? Did you not think about me at all when you were acting out? And he may say something like, no, I didn't. I was in the basement. I compartmentalized. I wasn't thinking about you in that moment. And that is almost impossible for her to believe or even comprehend. And she has to conclude that there's got to be more to it than that. You were just wanting to hurt me. Well, both of those statements have a piece of truth in them. And both of them are missing a piece of the truth. I want to try to walk through what's actually going on both sides, because the honest answer is bigger than either sentence. First, his sentence. No, I didn't think about you. I was in the basement. I was compartmentalizing. What is true about that sentence is that at the level of his felt experience, in the moment, the partner was not actively present in his thinking. He was not sitting in the basement, weighing her feelings against his desires and deciding to proceed. That's how compartmentalization works. It is designed precisely to make sure that that kind of weighing and evaluation never happens. So inside the basement, she was edited out. But what is missing from his sentence is the entire process that produced the system. The moment of compartmentalized acting out is not the whole event. The whole event includes every prior moment in which he chose to build the system, to refine the system, to return to the system, to protect the system, to activate the system again. All of those prior moments were moments in which she existed, she was thought about, and she was decided against. So when a man says, well, that's compartmentalization, and he stops right there, he is giving a true description of one moment of the harm. The moment in the basement, the moment of acting out. But he's treating it as if it were a true description of the whole entire harm. And it's not. That basement moment is the consequence of 1,000 earlier decisions that were not made in a compartmentalized state. Those earlier decisions were made by a man who was fully aware of his partner's existence, his family's existence, and the harm he was preparing to inflict, and he proceeded anyway. So if a man's only answer to her question is, well, I was in the basement, I was compartmentalizing, he is, without realizing it, using this clinical concept to confine the harm to a single moment, when the harm is actually distributed across the entire system that he built and maintained for years, if not decades. Now let's look at her sentence. I have a hard time understanding that and accepting that. I think you just wanted to hurt me. Well, what is true about her sentence is that something was operating in the system that proceeded without any regard for her. And from her side, the effect of his compartmentalization is functionally indistinguishable from the effect of someone who actively was cruel and wanted to hurt her. The damage is the same. The outcome is the same. The disregard for her is the same. The fact that her existence was being treated as something that did not have to be considered, all of that is accurate. She is sensing something that is real. There is no scenario in which a person builds a hidden life over years, runs it knowing it would devastate her if she found out, and continues to run it after every chance he has to stop. And that does not contain, at some level, a willingness to harm her. He may not have been wishing her pain, but he was willing to produce her pain as the price of his behavior. That willingness to produce her pain is a form of harm that is real, and her nervous system is identifying it correctly. What is incomplete is the specific mechanism. It is highly unlikely that he was, in the moment, in the basement, holding her in his mind and intentionally causing her suffering. That kind of active malevolence, wanting her to suffer, is a specific psychological state. And it is generally not what is operating in most cases. What is operating is something different. It is the willingness to harm her in order to do what he wanted to do, combined with a system that prevented him from feeling the weight of that. So how do you actually answer her question? Well, if you're the betrayer and she asks you something similar to this question, did you not think about me at all when you were acting out? The answer is not, no, I was in the basement. The answer is not, no, I was compartmentalizing. The answer is much more complex than that. It's harder to say. It's harder to own, but it is more honest. And the answer sounds something like this. I had built over years a way of operating in which you were not psychologically present when I was in the behavior. That state that I was in was not an accident. I built that system. I returned to it. I mastered it. So when you ask whether I was thinking about you in those moments, the honest answer is, in those specific moments, in the basement, acting out, no. But there's a bigger truth in that I need to own. The larger truth is that every moment leading up to those moments of acting out, every decision to build the basement, to maintain it, to reactivate it, that was a moment in which I knew that you existed, and I proceeded anyway. And if she insists that you must have had malicious intent, you must have wanted to hurt her, I want to invite you very carefully not to fight that sentence, because the substance underneath her sentence is right. What she is identifying in her sentence is your willingness. The willingness that sits underneath the compartmentalization. The willingness without which the system would not have been built in the first place. That willingness is yours. It's real. It produced effects in her life that are functionally exactly the same as the effects of cruelty. She doesn't have a way to process or understand compartmentalization. She's never done it. It's not legible to her. It doesn't commute. But she does understand cruelty. And this sure looks and feels and smells like cruelty. Compartmentalization is one of the things that betrayed partners may have the hardest time comprehending, understanding. How could that even happen? The reason you have a hard time understanding it is because your mind doesn't work that way. Most betrayed partners that I've worked with, they run integrated lives. They don't have parallel realities. They don't live in compartments like that. And the idea of having a whole hidden life, an alternative reality with its own values and its own people and its own activities and its own internal justification is so far outside how her own mind operates, it sounds like science fiction. So they look at what happened and they think, how? How could he do such a thing? How did I not see it? How could anyone live like that for that long without stopping? I want to end by talking about the one thing that is actually required for dismantling entitlement. And then I want to list 3 things that men substitute instead. Dismantling compartmentalization requires one main thing, and it's this: the willingness to bring previously hidden inner life content into visible territory, voluntarily, sustained over years, without any rewards. Let me unpack each phrase in that sentence. The phrase previously hidden inner life content, that is the territory of your inner life that the system was protecting. The thoughts that you were having that nobody knew you were having. The struggles that you were noticing inside yourself that you were not owning. The fears that you were managing all by yourself. The shame that you were hiding. These are the pieces of self that the basement was housing. The next phrase is to bring it into visible territory. That is, you bring it into spaces where it can be seen by people who have a relationship to your inner life. It can be a coach, a men's group, a trusted friend, a brother in recovery, your sponsor. Eventually, with conditions and at the right phase in recovery, it can be your partner. The point is the practice of letting your inner life cease to be hidden repeatedly until the architecture of hiding loses its structural integrity. The next key word is voluntary. This happens voluntarily. The basement was built on involuntary disclosure. Content stayed inside until exposure forced it into the light. Dismantling reverses that pattern. Content moves outward by your choice before anyone asks. The voluntary movement is what dismantles the architecture. Forced movement just verifies that the architecture is still operating. The next phrase is sustained over years. This is not an event. It's a way of being, indefinitely. It doesn't have a finish line. The man who's done this for 6 months and stopped has not dismantled anything. He ran a 6-month exercise. That's it. But the man who's done this for 5 years and he's still doing it, that's not an exercise. He's become a different kind of man. The final phrase is without rewards. Men, that's the hardest part. The visibility I'm describing does not produce recognition. So that is the one thing. There is no shortcut. There's no substitute. There's no way to streamline this. But we tend to reach for 3 different things instead of the one thing that's needed to dismantle the compartmentalization. These are 3 substitutes. The first substitute is treating disclosure as a one-time event. The man does a long, costly disclosure to his partner, maybe even with a polygraph, maybe in a structured therapeutic disclosure, and he empties out everything that he can identify. The disclosure is real and is complete, and the cost is real. He emerges from the disclosure exhausted, and he feels like he has done something significant. The fact is, he has done something significant, but he has not yet started the work that we're describing. Disclosure as an event is a single act. The capacity that dismantles compartmentalization requires a sustained practice over time that never stops. The man who's done one disclosure and treats himself as I'm now past that threshold structurally is just a man who's done one disclosure. That's it. The system that required hiding in the first place hasn't been touched. He's just emptied the contents of the basement on one specific day. The second substitute is treating the recovery program as the work. So the man enters serious recovery. He attends 12-step meetings. He works the 12 steps. He reads the recovery material. He meets with his therapist. He talks with his sponsor. He is investing significant time and energy in his recovery, and he's doing real work. He is not necessarily doing the work that we're describing. The recovery program is the scaffold. The dismantling of compartmentalization is the thing the scaffold is supposed to be supporting. A man who is using the scaffold without ever dismantling his compartmentalization is, in a sense, using recovery as the new compartment. He's in recovery, but he's not yet integrating. The third substitute is treating accountability as a relationship. So the man builds accountability structures around himself, perhaps his coach or a sponsor, an accountability partner or a group. He knows his life is being watched. He knows his finances are visible. He knows his devices are open. And he feels the safety of being held in a system of external observation and accountability. And external observation is appropriate. Our framework supports that. There's nothing wrong with having it as scaffolding. But the substitute is when external observation becomes the means of integrity rather than the support for the man's own integrity. When the man would, in the absence of anyone watching, slip back into hiding. When the answer to the question, is he integrated, is, well, only as long as someone's watching. That's not integration. That is still monitored compartmentalization. The basement is being prevented temporarily, but the man inside has not changed. He's just under surveillance now. The man inside of one of these substitutes is not aware that he's inside a substitute. The substitutes are what sincere men reach for when they're doing their best with the resources they have. And it looks like recovery.
Thank you for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. If today's episode was helpful, you can find additional educational resources and information about the Joy Recovery Academy and our private coaching at joy-recovery.com. Remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.